When you manage procurement for multiple facilities, every order matters. But when it's for a hospital system, they matter even more. Grainger gets it and knows there's no time for managing multiple suppliers and no room for shipping delays. That's why Grainger offers millions of products in fast, dependable delivery, so you can keep your facility stocked, safe, and running smoothly. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
When the insurance company doesn't pay what you deserve after you've been hurt in an auto accident, the law firm of Greenberg & Betterman is here to help you. Get a free consultation today. Visit gblawyers.com. That's gblawyers.com, and feel better.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening. Thank you for downloading. And thank you for subscribing to the latest edition of the 12 Kyle podcast. I'm 12 Kyle. Check this out. On this podcast, what I want to do is I want to take it back. At the time of this recording, it is what we call college season. And what I mean by that is, if you're on social media, you'll see a lot of kids graduating from college. You'll see quite a few kids making their announcements about where they're going off to college. And I saw a couple of posts and actually went to a college party, or at least an announcement party of a family friend whose daughter, one of my roommates from college, shout out to my boy Irv, his daughter is announcing where she's going to school. And he got me to thinking about my college days, more specifically, like how I got to college. Because it really was a unlikely story. And so that's what I'm going to talk about. As some of you know, if you've been listening to the podcast, you know that I attended South Carolina State University in Orangeburg, South Carolina. It's a historically black college and university. And I attended there from 1991 to 1996. But how I got there really was kind of unlikely. The reason being is that I'll let you guys in on a little secret. Prior to maybe my senior year in high school, I had no intentions of going there. None. It wasn't that it was a bad school, but I wasn't going there. Like, my eyes weren't set on that. And just to kind of give you a background, like, a lot of kids from where I'm from Florence, South Carolina. It's a small town in the state of South Carolina. A small city, I guess. But like, a lot of kids, particularly kids that I went to school with and kids that, went to other schools that I knew, like, particularly a lot of black kids, like, they only had, I'm not going to say only, they had a couple of choices, and these seem to be the popular choices. And in no particular order, it would be like South Carolina State. A lot of black kids that I knew went to the University of South Carolina, which is in Columbia, South Carolina, and Clemson University, which is in Clemson, South Carolina. Now, honestly, both of those schools were off my list pretty quickly. Like, I never once ever considered going to either of those schools. And it's not that they're not good schools. I guess they're good schools. I knew immediately, like, those schools weren't for me. Like, Clemson is, especially back then, I mean, it still is. It's a great school, but it's located really and literally in the middle of nowhere. I mean, like, there used to be this old sign that says all dirt roads lead to Clemson, which is not true. I had a chance to go up there. Beautiful campus. But I mean, coming out of high school, no, I wasn't going to go to a school, that was just like literally in the middle of nowhere. And then you've got the University of South Carolina, which is in the city of Columbia, which is the state capital, if you're not familiar. And, I had no interest in going there either. None. While Columbia is a great place. I love Columbia. South Carolina, no. And I honestly, growing up, I didn't understand the infatuation that both black and white people had with the University of South Carolina and Clemson. Again, no shade. Both are great schools, and I know some great alums there. Some of my closest friends went to school there, but it wasn't for me. And by the time I was, I want to say like a freshman in high school, I pretty much made up my mind that I wasn't going to a PWI, a predominantly white institution. That wasn't going to happen. Nothing wrong with them, but it wasn't for me. Just like some people say, well, HBCUs aren't for them. Trust me, an HBCU was for me, but a PWI damn sure wasn't. And, with, South Carolina and Clemson being the two biggest PWIs in the state of South Carolina, it wasn't going to happen. And I was totally cool with that. And anybody that knew me knew that, like, I had no interest, none, in going to either of those schools. Not even to play football, because, as some of you know, or many of you know, I played football in high school, and I was pretty good. I played wide receiver, and I was one of the better wide receivers in the state my senior year in high school, statistically. That's not me talking. That's just, the numbers speak for themselves. But very small. 5'6", 7", maybe on a good day, 5'7". 100 was about 150 pounds at the time. Nah, man. Nah. Nobody was going to, at either of those schools, be like, yo, we got to have him on our team. And that was cool because, like, again, I had no desire to go there. But the thing was that the only, let me go back. The only PWI that I actually considered, ironically, was Syracuse University. And the reason why I thought about Syracuse was because I wanted to be a journalism major, mass media, maybe television, and probably at that time, and probably still now, Syracuse has the best J school in the country. And so, I mean, you can look it up. I'm not exaggerating here, but, so no, I had no, other than Syracuse, I had no serious, thoughts of going to a PWI. And Syracuse, honestly, was, if I'm being realistic, it was too far away and too damn cold for me to even be considering. But I think that kind of faded by the time I was a sophomore. But that was really the only PWI that I had considered. Now there are other, HBCUs in the state of South Carolina, but South Carolina State wasn't, again, it really wasn't on my radar. And then let me tell you why. It always had the reputation of a quote unquote party school, which, looking back on it now, really is pretty dumb because is college. Every school is a party school. Every school parties, everybody knows how to get down, and every school has a way that they get down. So looking back on it realistically, calling South Carolina State a party school was probably pretty dumb. What else? I knew a lot of people there. I knew that there would be quite a few people. There were already quite a few people from my high school, Wilson High School, that was already there. I had an older cousin, my cousin Mike. He was there. And Mike's like a big brother. He's technically my cousin, but he's like my big brother. But he was there. I was pretty sure that my cousin Eric who's Mike's younger brother, I was pretty sure that Eric was going to be there, was going to go there. And Eric and I were in the same grade. So, you know, I pretty much thought that that's what it was going to be. So I was like, I don't know. And then to top that off, my uncle went to school there and he played football there, and he went on to play in the NFL. His name is Harry Carson. He played with the New York Giants for 13 years. And he was a dominant All-American at South Carolina State. He played in the 70s. And so, you know, there's a level of familiarity at South Carolina State as far as my family was concerned. And to be honest, the biggest thing was the expectation. There was an expectation, given the fact that Mike was already there. There was an expectation from our family and friends that Eric and I would go to South Carolina State. And if you know anything about me, like, you know that if people expect me to do one thing, I'm probably going to do something different. If you expect me to go left, I'm probably going to go right. And sometimes I'm going to go right just because. Not to be an asshole, but it's just like I'm my own person and I make my own decisions. But I just remember some of the, you know, family conversations like, oh yeah, they're going to state. That's what we call it. So they're going to state. Kyle's going to state. He'll be in Orangeburg. And I'm like, no, I won't. And I think this happens to a lot of kids where, you know, their parents or their family influences them to go to school, and not only go to school, but they influence them to go to the school. It may or may not be the school that they wanted to attend. But, you know, especially if your parents or you have other family members or loved ones that have attended that school. So, you know, case in point, if your mom and dad went to Clemson, you know, there's going to be a level of expectation that you're going to Clemson. So, and that goes for most schools. But I didn't want that pressure or that expectation on me. So I was like, well, we'll see. And I just kept saying that we'll see. And then I remember one time we had a family discussion and everybody was just adamant. And I was like, I'm not going there. And my mom said, oh, yes, you are. And she was like, well, she was like, if you don't go there, where are you going to go? And I said something. I think I might, you know, I said Syracuse. And she just looked at me and just started laughing. She was like, boy, you going to Orangeburg. And so I had that over my head. And not to mention, like, obviously, if you're playing high school football, you want to play college football, right? I knew that I could get an opportunity to play at South Carolina State. But from what I could tell, prior to me looking into South Carolina State, they were okay. They were like a middle of the road team in their conference. And I played wide receiver, right? You know, that's the person that catches the football, for those of you who don't know. And to be honest, South Carolina State didn't throw the ball a lot. In fact, they threw the ball very little. And so it's kind of like it would be ass backwards for me to go to South Carolina State to try to play football and they don't throw the ball. You know, it's not a good look. So, but academically, I knew it was a good school. I knew it was a really good school. It would be challenging, but any college is going to be challenging, right? So academically, they got me. You know, that was a feather in their cap, but that might have been the only pro. The rest were kind of like cons. I was like, nah. And then by the time that I became a senior in high school, I did put South Carolina State on my list of schools that I wanted to attend. Honestly, I had a list of 5, and South Carolina State probably is at 4. If I'm being honest. Who was on that list? Hampton University, Howard University, North Carolina A&T, South Carolina State, and then I think it was Florida A&M. So all 5 HBCUs. None of them are in my state other than South Carolina State. And but I knew that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to go HBCU, and I knew that those five, um, I could probably, I knew I could go to school there and be fine academically, but I also thought I could play football there too as well. So I had those things kind of working for me. Fast forward to my senior year, I have a great year in football. Again, one of the best receivers in the state, and obviously because of my size, I'm not being heavily recruited, right? So uh, I started looking around like, okay, well, hey, if I have to, I'll get an academic scholarship and then walk on the football team. Just do it like that. I'll be a I'll be a free agent, if you will. And I remember talking to the coach from Hampton University because Hampton was heavily recruiting my quarterback, a kid by the name of Keyshawn Durant. And Keyshawn was one of the best athletes I've ever seen in my life. And he could sling the ball like 60 yards on a rope and with very little effort. One of the strongest arms you would ever want to see. And he was this quarterback, 6'2", 6'3", about 210, ran like a 4.40. 40. I mean, like, he was a hell of an athlete, played 3 or 4 different sports. And so I'm thinking, okay, well, wherever Keyshawn's going, that would be great if we could go and we could do and duplicate some of the same things that we did at Wilson, in college. So I'm not worried about the academic side. Academics, I got that locked. I was a very good student. My test scores were fine. I did well on the SAT, despite falling asleep during the test. But that's another story for another day. So, I mean, like, I wasn't worried about that. I wasn't worried about how it fit in, socially, because, I think I'm a pretty social guy. I think I would have done well with the ladies. So, I didn't really have any issues there. The biggest question for me was about football. So Hampton's recruiting Keyshawn. So I'm like, okay. And Keyshawn went on a recruiting visit to Hampton, and he loved it. He was like, yo, man, we got to go to Hampton. We got to go to Hampton. So I applied at Hampton. I applied at A&T. I applied at Howard. I applied, obviously, at South Carolina State. I don't think I applied at FAMU. I don't recall applying at FAMU. So of my school, of my list of 5 schools, only 4 I applied to. And so, the senior year is going fine. And, people are starting to ask, okay, well, hey, where are you going to school? Where are you going to school? Where are you going to school? It was the constant question. And honestly, after football season, so we're talking about the second semester of my senior year, I had no idea. Like, it was up in the air. And by this time, Eric says, okay, I'm going to South Carolina State. And so I already know he's in there. And again, his older brother Mike is there. So, and then I knew a couple of our classmates from Wilson who were going. So, it could be a family affair if I chose South Carolina State University. But I wasn't going. I was like, no, I'm not going, man. And so Eric made his decision. I was like, okay, that's cool. I'm happy for you. But then I started, kind of looking around. I remember I went on a recruiting visit to Fayetteville State University in Fayetteville, North Carolina. And that was a nightmare. Hey, man, no shade to Fayetteville State, but I've never seen, when they took us around, the campus and stuff. And man, when I saw that grass on that football field, oh my gosh. And this is no knock. Maybe they just had a bad day. Maybe they just didn't, the lawnmower man just wasn't there, whatever. But that grass was the highest grass that I've ever seen in my life on a football field. I'm like, this cannot be a college football field that you guys play on. And the grass was high and it was lumpy. And I was just like, nah, man. And so I got 30 minutes into the recruiting visit, and I was like, I know I'm not coming here. Then they had to stay in the dorms, and we were sleeping on these raggedy beds, and it was whack. It was whack. But because I went up there with a couple of my teammates, and one of them, actually 2 of them, ended up signing to go to school there. But again, no shade. I love Fayetteville State, but I knew 20 minutes after being on that campus that it wasn't for me. And I really, if I drove my car, I would have left right then and there. I wouldn't have spent the whole weekend in Fayetteville. But we went to a party or whatever. And it was all right. It wasn't me. I 20 minutes in, I knew it wasn't for me. So the weekend was kind of drab. But still got other schools. I still have applications out there. So I applied, and again, I don't know what happened. I mean, we're talking about paper applications here. We're not talking about going online, because again, this is 1991, right? So I applied, not hearing anything back or whatever, and I'm like, okay, I don't know what happened to my application at North Carolina A&T, and I don't know what happened to my application at Howard University. Neither of them accepted me. To be honest, I don't even know if they got my stuff, or maybe it's just it could very well still be sitting on someone's desk. And folks, I know you've heard me talk about Howard and A&T and my disdain for A&T. It has nothing to do with that. It's all football. But it is a great school. Both are great schools. And I love some of their alums. So it's all love. But it came down to South Carolina State and Hampton. And ironically, I remember sometime during my senior year, Keyshawn was also being recruited by South Carolina State. So was our tight end, Ronald Barr. And the then offensive coordinator at South Carolina State, he had a meeting. He was talking to both me, Keyshawn, and Ronald Barr. And now keep in mind that at the time, this offensive coordinator, he's there, but he doesn't know who my uncle is. And in a weird twist of fate, my uncle played under the legendary head coach, Willie Jeffries, college football legend. Look him up. We call him Coach J. So Coach J and my uncle are like, Coach J is like my uncle's dad, right? And my uncle played under him in the 70s and became an All-American, and they became best friends. And I remember when my uncle got married in 1988, Coach J was his best man. Like, this is guy, and they talk every other day and all this stuff like that. And I remember one time we had a cookout at our house, and Coach J came to the house, and he was there. He was talking. He's like, "Hey, Kyle, how you doing?" And I might have been in like the 10th grade. He's like, "So I'm going to see you in Orangeburg in a couple of years, right?" And I was like, "We'll see, Coach." And I was like, I'm not about to lie to this man. But ironically, Coach J was still coaching at South Carolina State at the time that I'm being recruited. And so I don't know if the offensive coordinator who's talking to us at this time in this meeting, I don't know if he knows that, that there's a connection there between my uncle and me knowing Coach, because I've known Coach J literally all of my life, right? And he's been at family functions and hung out with us and stuff like that. So, I don't know that he knew that. But anyway, we're in this meeting and he's talking to us about South Carolina State. And I'm like, and he's like, yeah, he said, I could see where, Keyshawn, you could come here, and actually the three of you could come here and you guys could duplicate what you did at Wilson. And I was like, when he said that, I hadn't really thought about it. And I kind of looked at Keyshawn and we looked at Ronald Barr and we was just like, that would be interesting, because we had a high-powered offense in high school, and the idea sounded intriguing. You got a school that is in Orangeburg, South Carolina, which is about an hour and a half from Florence, and so you're not far from home. You're not too close, but you're not too far away where your parents can't get to you. And then you have familiar faces, and the idea of playing with two of my teammates, definitely intrigued me. But it was still South Carolina State. And it was still fourth on my list. So I was like, okay. But that time came and went. Like, we had that meeting, and, I didn't talk to anybody from South Carolina State after that. And I guess maybe I didn't sound too interested or appear to be too interested, because, they left. They didn't get any information or anything like that. But I had already applied, and I did tell them that I had applied. And so fast forward to, the spring semester, it's getting closer to graduation, and I'm still up in the air, but I'm still carrying on my senior year, like like I know what I'm doing. And my parents like, hey, well, what have you decided? And I'm like, I don't know yet. I'll figure it out. And one day I went to the mailbox, right? I go to the mailbox, get the mail, and there's a letter, actually 2 letters addressed to me. One letter was from South Carolina State, and the other letter was from Hampton University. So I go in the house, sit down, I open up the South Carolina State letter. It tells me that I've been accepted for the fall semester 1991, blah, 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 blah. Okay, cool. All right, so let me see what this letter from Hampton says. It says I've been accepted, blah, 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 blah. And what made it even sweeter is that Hampton, one of my best friends, you guys have heard him on here, my boy Zell had already been accepted in Hampton. So I was like, damn, if I go to Hampton, I got one of my best friends going to Hampton. I was like, and I can go up there and play ball, and this be dope. And I'd heard so much about the school and everything. I'd never visited Hampton, right? And so I'm like, okay, Hampton was in the league because Hampton was number 1 on my list. And here it is. I get an acceptance letter from South Carolina State and Hampton on the same day. And so I'm amped up. I'm hyped up. I go to school the next day and I'm talking to some people, and they, I'm telling them, I'm like, man, I'm leaning towards Hampton, right? Because I'm already in. I may have to walk on, but if I have to walk on a football team, that's fine. And then somebody told me something. I think it might have been one of my coaches. They said, well, Hampton is under investigation right now, and they're looking at being on probation. Meaning that something happened at Hampton, maybe some type of impropriety, and either the school or the NCAA was looking at putting them on some type of probation. And at that time, probation could be anything. It could be a reduction in scholarships. It could be, anything. It could be something where you're not appearing on TV, where you can't appear in a bowl game. It could be any number of things. So that was kind of hanging over Hampton's head. And I'm like, okay, do you really want to roll the dice going to Virginia to a school where nobody knows you other than your partner, but you're not known on this football team, you're not known in that state, and trying to get on to that team, so forth and so on. And you've got the possibility of being on probation over your head. And I couldn't roll the dice. So I was like, okay, South Carolina State it is. So I reached out to, the people in the office and everything. And they said, well, hey, I had scholarships or whatever like that, but it was like, well, hey, you can come and try to walk on the football team. We can't guarantee you anything, but you'll have the opportunity. I was like, all right, that's all I need. Cool. Because by the time that I made my decision to go to South Carolina State, all the scholarships were gone. Like they had already accounted. If I had committed to South Carolina State when I spoke with the offensive coordinator, I would have gotten a scholarship, or at least an offer. But at that time, it was way too late. I mean, like I'm talking, there's probably, by the time I decided, it was right before prom. So we're talking like late April, it's probably like late April. So I was like, all right, this is where I'm going. So I remember I told my mom and my aunts, I was like, hey, we need to meet tonight, as a family. So I have something important to tell everybody. So we walk in the room and we're sitting in the living room, and I'm like, Eric's there. And I'm like, yeah. And so my brother, and I'm like, all right, so what I wanted to tell you guys was, I made my decision. I'm going to South Carolina State. And they looked at me like, man, I thought you was going to tell us something. They was like, my mom was like, that's what you called us in here for? She was like, boy, we knew you were going to South Carolina State. So yeah, that's where I chose. And I will say this, that decision to attend South Carolina State University in 1991 was one of the best decisions that I've ever made in my entire life. not only did it allow me to go someplace where, obviously I could play football. That wasn't the issue. But that's playing football. That's another podcast. But what it did was it allowed me to, it was a place where I could grow, and a place that allowed me to discover me. It allowed me to discover my people. And that's not to say that it wouldn't have happened at Hampton or North Carolina A&T or Howard or FAMU for that matter, or any other HBCU. It definitely wouldn't have happened at University of South Carolina or Syracuse or Clemson or anywhere else, Alabama, wherever, right? But that decision definitely changed my life. It is, again, one of the most important decisions that I've ever made. I didn't know that at the time, but that's, why I chose South Carolina State University. And to be honest, if I had to do it all over again, I would have chosen South Carolina State University, period. I don't think that I would have come in contact with the kind of people that I came in contact with, the friendships, the relationships, the contacts, everything. I don't think I would have had those kind of relationships or established those kind of relationships had I gone to any other school. And that's not to say that there's not a Mo or a, Russell or Quevin or any of my boys from South Carolina State. It's not to say that those guys aren't on Hampton's campus or North Carolina A&T's campus. It's just different. As many of you know, I met my wife, Sharice, there. I can't tell you that there wasn't a Sharice at Howard. Had I gone to Howard, I'm pretty sure I would have met somebody that I could have, been cool with and gotten married to and had 4 kids with. Was it possible? Of course it was possible. But a lot of times, particularly when you're choosing a college, you have to go with what feels right for you and what fits for you and where do you fit. Because, keep in mind, even though it's an HBCU, at the time that I went to South Carolina State, it's probably about 6,000 students on campus. So you go from, being at Wilson High School, which is obviously a high school, 1,500 kids to 6,000 kids on the campus. You have to figure out where you fit in. You're no longer a big fish in a little pond. And I mean, if I'd gone to A&T is at, I don't know, at the time, probably about 13,000 kids. Maybe more, maybe less. I'm not sure. But, where do you fit? How do you fit? Do you feel like you belong there? And I mean, like, everything that I wasn't unsure of was reaffirmed by that decision. I definitely fit in. I definitely felt like I belonged. I definitely felt welcome and loved. When I stepped on that campus, unbeknownst to me, there was a team of people, professors, administrators, workers. There were a team of people on that campus that were there to make sure that I had everything that I needed to succeed. And they were, pushing me along the way. And they were cheering me on as I was succeeding. And I think sometimes when you go through the process of going to college and you graduate, you're standing there on stage and you're happy and you think you did it all by yourself, which you carried most of the load, but a lot of people helped you along the way. And I would be remiss if I did not, thank everybody who helped me along the way. But I didn't know any of this when I chose South Carolina State University. It was just me at the time. It was just me just going to school. This is where I want to spend the next 5.5 years in college. And it was a blessing. Again, it was just a fit for me. Like, I'll give you an example. Like, I never went on an official visit to South Carolina State. I went to homecoming my junior year in high school. And we went down, me and Eric went down, we hung out with Mike. And the love on that campus, I wish I could take that and put it in a bottle and sell it. I mean, it'd be a bestseller. it's immeasurable. And I don't think that you can ever understate the power that the love that you get on an HBCU campus is. But my campus in particular, it was everything for me. And again, it was a team of people who supported me, who loved me, and pushed me along the way. Same for the football field and in the classroom. And all of that was a culmination of me graduating. But I chose South Carolina State University. And I think it's one of the best decisions that I've ever made. Trust me when I tell you, had I not chose South Carolina State, I would not be sitting here today. Not on this podcast, not living how I've lived these last some odd years. It wouldn't happen. I'm not going to tell you I'd be a bum back in Florence, but there's no way. There's no way. Everything that I learned there in and out of the classroom gave me the tools to be where I am today. Everything. I didn't know it at the time. A lot of the times I questioned some of the things that I was learning and some of the things that I went through, but every experience prepared me for where I am today. And that's the thing about, my school is that, and I'm sure anybody that went to any college can say this, but I will say this because you're listening to me, but it definitely prepared me for life. And no, it wasn't a party school. I mean, we partied, but we partied just like anybody else. But the misconceptions about it was, I was way off base. South Carolina State was everything to me. And it still is. And that love that I felt back in the fall of 1991 when I stepped on that campus is the same love that I feel when I step on campus in 2022. There's a feeling that you get, and it's kind of hard to explain, but it's there and it's constant. And what I've told my kids, given the fact that their parents both went to South Carolina State, I don't put any pressure on them to attend. But I told them, I said, look, when you step on a campus, if it feels like home, then that's where you need to be. And it's always felt like home for me. And I chose South Carolina State University, and it is by far one of the greatest decisions that I've ever made. Ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it for me. Thank you for checking out this edition of the 12 Kyle podcast. I'm your boy, 12 Kyle. I'll catch you guys next time. 5,000.
If you work in university maintenance, Grainger considers you an MVP because your playbook ensures your arena is always ready for tip-off. And Grainger is your trusted partner, offering the products you need all in one place, from HVAC and plumbing supplies to lighting and more. And all delivered with plenty of time left on the clock, so your team always gets the win. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, visit Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Today's tip from the injury law firm Greenberg and Betterman. Too many pedestrians lose themselves in their phones and have accidents when they walk. So don't do it. Greenberg and Betterman is here to help you. Contact gblawyers.com, that's gblawyers.com, and feel better.